Welcome to the Resistance broadcast. It's TRB Live, and thank you so much for joining us. If you are joining us live today on a Thursday evening, that's right, it is June. It is June 1st, which means Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny arrives this month. Star Wars cousin, right? Indiana Jones. But then also that means 2 months, calendar months away from Ahsoka. Things are starting to heat up, at least by me too. The weather's getting better. It's nice. But thank you so much for joining us, whether you're listening on your podcast apps or you're joining us live or you're watching on video. Thanks for being a part of TRB. Welcome to the base. I'm John. With me as always, James and Lacey, and we're here to talk to you about all the latest Star Wars news. So guys, we obviously love Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think all of us enjoyed the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. What do you guys think about what Deborah Chow had to say about, and this isn't nothing new, but she had said like that was sort of a finalized, complete story we told. But then in her latest one, she pulled the Ron Howard and goes, never say never. Well, Lacey, what do you think about that?
I mean, I brought her up last week when we were talking. What were we talking about? Who brought this up recently? I feel like this keeps coming up. Was Kathleen Kennedy was talking about, hey, we
Kathleen
might
Kennedy
bring
was
back
talking about it. Yeah.
Obi-Wan Kenobi eventually. We don't know that.
Right.
Maybe
And
as
I
a
brought
movie. Yeah.
Right. And I had brought up that, well, Deborah was very adamant that this was a one-time thing. This was a series limited thing. And that I genuinely believed her when she said that. I feel like the never say never, like, you never know, has been like written into PR agreements with people now. Like that Disney and Lucasfilm are like, please don't ever say like specific strict wording
that will or will not happen. Right.
Correct. Yeah. I think that they're kind of like, you can say your opinion, but leave it open for interpretation.
Lacey, what if Deborah Chow said, if I need another house?
Then I'd be like, did you talk to Oscar Isaac? Because he said the same thing. Look, I would love more Obi-Wan Kenobi. I would love more of that story if it's there to tell. I know Ewan really wants to do it. I know Hayden wants to do it. I don't know what that story would be, but there's a reason why they have writers and awesome directors and production people to figure that out. I am not surprised by her comments. I think she's been pretty straightforward from day one that like, hey, I was a part of this because it was a limited series. And like throughout the whole press tour, she was saying that. So her stuff doesn't surprise me.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree too. The only thing that's strange to me is that I think when Deborah Chow was involved with that project, the whole time she was doing it, it was like, this is one and done. And I'm not entirely positive that it was as received by fans as they would hoped it would have been. So then there is always the possibility that after everything was said and done, there's been conversations about whether they do or don't want to, change things up. And if we did want to continue it, would we bring back Deborah, and so she's not really part of those conversations potentially. I don't know. I'm just saying. So it's even if she was
like Ron Howard saying like, hey, I want Solo to happen, but I don't know of it. I've never heard of it.
Yeah. And so I'm just kind of thinking like, I'm not entirely positive if they did do more things with Obi-Wan Kenobi in that era, if Deborah Chow would even be the person to ask, because she might not even get asked back. It's possible. I like the series, but I'm basing it on, we were all sort of like, she did a couple episodes of Mandalorian and, this and this, and then she's getting this and everything's falling on her, and then it was sort of like mixed received well, so I don't know. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think any of the blame from me, just retrospectively looking at Kenobi, because I feel like that series got better as each episode went on, especially that final episode, that epic battle between Vader and Obi-Wan. The music got better.
It dips in the middle. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, and Natalie Holt went, explained to us that, there were certain things she wasn't allowed to do, and she was overridden by Kathleen Kennedy in some instances with the music. I don't think it's all on Deborah Chow for people who didn't like Kenobi. I think it filmed during the pandemic, which is very difficult, even in that atmosphere. There was a lot of, you have a young child actor, probably only certain call times that they're allowed to work. And then also, and I'm not trying to make excuses, but the budget clearly wasn't there. There was some of it was like, ooh, this looks a little not up to Star Wars' standard. And I don't think that's falls upon Deborah Chow. I'm sure she did the best she could with what she had. But I still really enjoyed the series, and that's one that I'll probably rewatch. So if she does come back, I'd be happy. But I wouldn't blame her if she's like, I didn't get to say everything I wanted to say, or who knows? I'm speculating, but either way, we'll see what happens. I personally don't know that we need more Obi-Wan, but I'll be happy to take it, of course. But we have a lot of cool stories to get into. Before we do, just want to remind people, we do have super chats available if you are interested in having your comment, because we do get a lot of comments. And if we read every one of them on the show, then we probably just have to just leave and just have all be the podcast.
It would just be a chat.
Yeah, we would just leave. The three of us would just check or put AI versions of us up on the screen.
They can do that now.
That's very popular now, yeah. But all jokes aside, we do have super chats if you want your comments read on the show for live and, of course, the audio platforms and for us to discuss them. But just hang out, have a good time, and I hope you enjoy the show. And we do have some stories to tackle, and James is going to steer us through this asteroid field of news.
It's the Resistance.
We still have time to go in this episode. We haven't quite met the deadline, but we're talking about deadline right now because they got a chance to sit down with Rick Famuyiwa as part of their podcast. They have their own podcast. If you're interested in that, you can go check out as they speak with some of the industry's best. This week was Rick Famuyiwa, and he was sitting down to talk about the evolution of Mandalorian Season 3, where they saw a lot of their characters going and what the point of that story was. It was all very interesting, and a little bit of why he chose which episode that he directed, for for nominations with the Emmys and everything. Is a really cool listen if anybody wants to go check it out. But we already did check it out, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. I'm going to start off with you, John, and your thoughts on Rick Famuyiwa's comments about Mandalorian Season 3.
Yeah, I like Rick a lot, and he's one of those filmmakers that I think he's not like a big personality like a Taika Waititi or something like that. But anytime he does get the opportunity to speak about this stuff, I feel like he does speak with a lot of confidence and conviction. He's not just doing. There's some people I feel like sometimes talk because they want to say the right thing, or they want to say what they think people want to hear. And I think he just has conviction in what they're doing. And if you look at his journey, you talk about Mando's journey, you put Rick right alongside him, because he comes in and he was already established director, but he comes in and he's directing an episode of The Mandalorian. And now we fast forward to Season 3, and he's executive producer alongside Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. We go to Celebration, and the three of them are now like a trio, and they walk out on stage together. And I really liked what he had to say about Season 3, because I know people had mixed feelings about Season 3. There were a couple episodes I'm like, they probably could have done something else with these. And I still think there was something that was supposed to be going on with Boba Fett, and then Tamara Morrison said as much. So I don't know if there was a little cut and paste thing going on. I'm looking at Lizzo and Jack Black particularly. But I will say this. I like what he had to say about how the story is going to get more complex, and it needed to. And it's for the growth of Din Djarin. People say like, oh, there's all these characters now, and it's just Dave Filoni continuing the Clone Wars. And it's like, well, I could see that. Of course, you got Bo-Katan in the mix, but you need more to support Din Djarin's growth as a character. And I think that's what this all really is, because ultimately it still is the show about him and his relationship with Grogu. But if you go back and watch the early episodes of Season 1, it's a different guy now. And it's a lot of that's because of what he's gone through in each season, including Season 3. So I think Season 3, time will be good to it. And I look forward to where Season 4 goes, because there's a lot of directions they can take this series in. And I think that, Favreau has already written it. He knows where the story is going. And I like that he wrote it as they were, he finished writing it as they were developing Season 3, which I love for the sake of continuity. He's not just saying like, well, they like this and they didn't like that, so let's go with this. Like diminishing Jar Jar in Attack of the Clones because of the vitriol. So I like everything he had to say, and I do. He's one of those people, I believe in him, sort of like a Tony Gilroy, and Tony Gilroy is a bit more of a snarky personality. I think Rick has a warmer presence to him, but I believe he has the same amount of conviction and confidence in his abilities. So anytime Rick speaks about what they're doing, I definitely make sure I listen.
Yep. Lacey, any thoughts on Rick's comments, I guess? Yeah.
James, I'm actually going to bounce this back to you because I know you're a big Rick fan. So you go first.
I am, yeah. And I think he, you know, to give it away a little bit, he said that they picked episode 7 for their Emmy nomination, which was the Spies, which was the one that they showed us at Celebration. And I think all of this makes a lot of sense. It was a great episode. It was incredible, from the humor to the action to just the revelation of characters' storylines. Great moments, you know, Grogu stopping the fight, you know, and all this. It's quite an incredible episode, and I think they did the right pick by going with that one out of this season to be the one that represents the you know, what the accomplishments that they have made for filmmaking and creation of that art, you know, to be on display. So I think that that's a good thing. As far as his comments about the Mandalorian moving forward is, I think what you, maybe a different way of saying it, John, what you were saying there is that he has a confidence as if like he knows 2 + 2 = 4. And if somebody's asking him, what's that question? He doesn't have to think about it. He doesn't have to come up with an answer. He's just like, well, it's 4. And let me explain it. Why? This is exactly, we already talked about this a long time ago.
Right.
Been talking about this for a long time while we were in the process, and now that we're here and people are asking us questions about it because it's all new to them, it's not new to us. We've already thought all this stuff through, and he doesn't really like play around like maybe some other people would, as far as like maybe where they're going or teasing other ideas and stuff. He just answers the questions like they're facts, you know. Rick is awesome. And I think they made a good choice. And, you know, I don't know what it's up against. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I would hope that they would, you know, do something with this episode, because having watched it at Celebration, and maybe I'm a little spoiled because of that, saw it on the screen with a bunch of people, but it was amazing. And it was a very good television.
Yes. Yeah.
So Lacey.
Yeah, you know, Rick is just so, he's like on Dave Filoni level for me, of like someone that as soon as they open their mouth and start talking, you're like, I will listen to whatever you have to say. You know what I mean? He comes from just such a creative space and such a knowledge of human behavior and just storytelling that you immediately want to listen to whatever he has to say and whatever he's contributing to a project. That being said, I really loved his quote about, you know, we were just discussing about how, you know, it started as a Western about the individual, but then it grows into more of like how we should operate as a society. And I think that, yes, that is totally true about Mando being a Western. We all knew this when we talked about, you know, spaghetti Western, like season 1, and we heard that term so much.
I can't hear that without thinking of the joke where it goes, Jonah Hill says, "Stop, you had me at spaghetti." You know what I'm talking about?
No, but that's really funny.
Yeah, it was in one of those burns or whatever. What's it?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, roasts. Yeah.
Right.
One of those burns.
Yeah, I couldn't think of what they were called. I was scrambling for that, but Jonah Hill, you had me at spaghetti.
But I think in general, what he's saying too also reflects Star Wars, because as we know, with every Star Wars story and every Star Wars adventure, it's never about one person's journey necessarily, because they can never get from the beginning to the end of that trip without having multiple people to help them get there. Like Luke's not going to succeed in his mission and destiny without all the different players, from Kenobi to Leia to Han to C-3PO to Chewie to whatever. So I feel like I love how he brought it up in the sense of Westerns, because it totally makes sense in relation to The Mandalorian. But I think it also makes sense in how we are as people. Like, we can't operate alone. We're not meant to be alone as humans. So when you see that replicated in media and in stories, you want to feel that community and connection as well. And I think that him kind of standing up for that explains kind of what John was saying is the biggest critique we've been hearing over and over and over again for the past few seasons is like, oh my God, there's so many cameos. Oh my God, there's so many people, blah, blah, blah. But he's expressing it in such an intelligent and wonderful way of, hey, the story starts with him, but it grows beyond that. And we hear that from Yoda, you know, we are what we grow beyond type thing in The Last Jedi. So I think that it's lovely to hear that they have such an idea, as in Rick and the creators like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, with this story of they're very solid and true in their conviction of what they want to tell and how they want to tell it. And we have to remember as fans that we're along for the ride. And it's okay to not like things, and it's okay to like things and geek out and do whatever and have criticisms. But at the end of the day, it's their story, and just have confidence in the way that they have confidence themselves. Like, have the ability to believe that they know what they're doing, because they do.
And
So it's always wonderful to hear from Rick.
and you know, like, he was very cryptic about the future, and we know season 4 is happening because, you know, Favreau already wrote it, and he said that as much. But you know, if the strike wasn't happening, he probably could have said like, yeah, we're looking to start filming in October, and you know, be out, you know, whenever.
And you know, Rick defends the writer's strike. He's definitely someone on the side of writers.
Yeah, right. And Favreau like had finished writing this long before the strike, so it wasn't like he was writing during the strike. But I hope we get it for, you know, 2025. It'd be so cool, like, if the strike ends and it works out where we get the new Mando and a new Star Wars movie. Like 2025 on paper could like shape up to be like a massive year for Star Wars. So hopefully they're able to iron that stuff out and get people back to work at the way they should be compensated, so that we can get that year, you know. But
All right, well, moving on to our next story here, we're going to talk a little bit about Mark Hamill, who has been in the news recently as far as Esquire is concerned, because he did a piece on his life, basically a lot of different factors and stuff. Now, he's in a new movie right now. If anybody wants to go see it and check that out, it's a comedy movie in theaters, I think like today, right? Or last week or something.
Came out last weekend. Yeah.
Last weekend. Okay. Yeah.
The Machine, right?
Yes. And but what we wanted to talk about that relates to Star Wars was his time in The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett being something that he got to be a part of, but it was sort of like a digital replacement and all that. And he was asked, you know, is there going to be more? Is this all leading up to anything? And he's like, I really don't think so. I don't think that's the case. Besides, I don't really even know if they, and I'm paraphrasing all this, but I don't really even know if they want to tell those stories. But if they do, I just say it makes more sense to recast, find a young actor and let him be Luke Skywalker, which sort of lends permission from Mark Hamill to fans that if they ever wanted to go this route, he says they should probably make a more intelligent choice as far as how much it would cost and how time consuming and involved it is to do all this stuff. Just hire somebody else to play Luke Skywalker. He's cool with it. He thinks that makes more sense. So I was going to kick it around to you guys. What you think about this particular thing? Lacey, I can start with you because I know you love Luke Skywalker. What do you think about recasting Mark Hamill?
I don't just love Luke. I love Mark Hamill. You know what? Here's the thing about the recasting comments is I think Mark knows that his journey with the character, in the sense of who he played in the Mandalorian, was kind of a make good, so to speak. I think, you know, he says, the quote is, where's the quote? The quote is, of course, things change when Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, and the artist formerly known as Baby Yoda show up at your house telling you about the Mandalorian. And he took the meeting. And I think him saying that he's okay with recasting is kind of like passing that torch, saying like, look, I don't want the character to end because it's not me. And I think that takes a lot of strength for someone to say, because before that, he talks about The Last Jedi, which I thought was kind of a bigger quote for me. I know we've heard this from him before, but saying like, when he read The Last Jedi script, he said, okay, well, that's it for me. And then he said, and then you start that process of disengaging from something that's been a part of your life. And I feel like this interview and every interview that I've kind of heard, read, watched from Mark over the years, he's in a weird place right now with Star Wars, in the sense of this is something that's been a part of his life for so long. And I can't help but kind of sympathize with that, in the sense of like, if tomorrow I decided to walk away from Star Wars forever and not be engaged with it at all, there's a sadness there. There's a bittersweet of like, look at all the things I've accomplished and done with Star Wars, and look at me giving that up, but knowing like, hey, maybe there's other things, right? There's a sadness there. And I think that Mark is openly expressing that. So I applaud him for being honest. I think this interview in general is interesting, just because he kicks it off talking about the movie, and the author says that, you know, he must be trained to like immediately get to what he needs to promote, because he's always asked about Luke, and he knows it's coming, and he knows that Star Wars is on the plate or on the table to be asked about, but he wants to get to what he's promoting. But I'm okay with it being recast if Mark's okay, because he did talk about the process and said that it was weird because he would do the take and then the actor would come in and do the take, and he said it's weird because they basically mimic me and basically do exactly what I did. So as a fan and as someone that just like really loves Mark, and I'm speaking about him like I know him, I've met him a couple times, but like we don't know each other, but like he just means a lot to me. So knowing that he's okay with it makes me okay with it as a fan, and knowing that he got that last chance to play Luke in his like Jedi prime kind of came full circle with me, because we all know that I have issues with The Last Jedi and the way Luke was handled. That's just my journey. No one else can.
That's Mark Hamill's journey too. I mean,
right. But I'm saying as a fan, I know people have criticisms about like, oh, if you didn't like this, you didn't get it. It's just how I handled it. You know, he's my childhood hero. He's been my hero since like second grade. So it's just a different, I think Sam Witwer, which we haven't talked about, but Sam Witwer said it perfectly recently when he did an interview about like how Luke changes off screen, and maybe that's why people have issues with it or something like that. But anyway, that's a conversation.
Tried to say it in the most politically acceptable way possible.
Sam Witwer knows his stuff. Like he's so good at like expressing like exactly how I was feeling, and I was like, yes, Sam Witwer, please come on the show. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, no, I'm totally okay with it, and I think that there are more stories to tell with Luke. But we've talked about it on the show before. I don't know if we're going to get them anytime soon necessarily. I think they're focused on Ahsoka and they're focused on the Mandalorian, obviously. Could it be down the line? Sure. And I think already from what we've seen from season 2 with the Mandalorian to season 3, or not season 3, with the Book of Boba Fett, 2.5 of Luke Skywalker's progression with the digital technology and the deep fake and, you know, that kind of digital imagery on the face, I think it could get even better. And I know people have their critiques of it. I loved it. I loved the first version. I loved the second version. And I would love a third version, whatever it is, whether it's some type of CGI with the actor or just the actor. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely where the story is going, as far as like he says, recast a young actor. But I go, well, what if we just did exactly what we were doing, but we didn't involve you? Like we got the same person to, you know, for the facial stand-in, like we got your performance, but then we really just did a lot of stuff on this other person who was sort of the stand-in because we needed them for him for the visual effects. Could we move forward with that and have that person act out the scenes and stuff and just be digitally replacing that face to make it look like this? Because I think a lot of this story also comes back.
The actor looked a lot like him. This
he
recent
did,
one.
and it would be. I think it would be weird for them to get into like, well, we're just not gonna do anything with his face. Like I feel
Graham
like probably,
Hamilton. Sorry, yeah. Graham Hamilton was his name. The guy that played him.
So then, I think I think they would probably go down that route, because part of this story comes back to a little while ago, and John, you'll be able to pick up from here. I can't remember if it was Bob Iger or Kathleen Kennedy, but one of the two of them was saying they sort of felt like they did something with Luke and it worked, and then they also did something with Han and it didn't work, which was recasting the character, and so they were sort of like, we're not going to be doing that anymore. I remember that being like a hot topic, because we were like, we love what Alden did, you know what I mean? Like that wasn't a bad decision to make, and now it kind of is a little hard to hear.
She walked back those statements immediately.
I
She did.
understand that,
But
that
she still made
is-
them. He's saying she still made
Yeah,
them.
and it's something that maybe she walked them back, but it's still like what they're thinking, you know, like, oh, I'm sorry I said what I said, but you know, like it's kind of one of those things. So I don't know that they really like the idea of recasting these characters. And where I was gonna, I mean, you can comment on that, but also I was gonna point out too that we're in that weird period that you have on many occasions pointed out, that they normally don't recast if it's in between two performances.
Right.
And the first time we're ever going to break that is Genevieve O'Reilly playing Mon Mothma in Ahsoka, as long as that, you know, plays out the way we think it is based on the trailer. But they've never done that before, and if they did recast, this would be the first time they ever played in that world. So what are your thoughts, John, on what Mark Hamill had to say?
Well, first, all due respect to Mon Mothma, but it's a different animal than Luke Skywalker. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm just saying it's never happened.
No one's like, Caroline Blackiston is my only Mon Mothma.
Yeah,
and that's
at
my
this point, I can't even put it together in my head.
So yeah, Mon Mothma is great, and that they're fleshing her out in Andor incredibly, but it's we're talking about Luke Skywalker here. Yeah. So there's a lot of nuance to this. There's a lot to get into. I start with the quote from Mark Hamill in The Director and the Jedi, when he lays it out there and he's like, this character doesn't belong to me. They rent it out to me. And I just have to do the best I can to tell the story they want to tell. And I mean, I've heard from people off record who has spoken with Mark Hamill. He still does not like what they did with his character. And that's fine. You know, he doesn't go on about it like people do years after they don't like something. He said how he felt back then, and he's been quiet about it since. And because he's a mature adult and he's professional, he still says, he still did a great job, even though it wasn't what he was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So he gave 110% to that role, even when he didn't like it. And if you have a chance and you haven't watched it, Director and the Jedi shows you that, like, firsthand, that he didn't like it, but he still gave his all.
Yeah.
And we talk a little bit about that on Monday's episode.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert there.
Yeah. So when you're talking about this stuff, I mean, I personally don't want to see any more live action Luke, aside from maybe a cameo. I think we will see him in Ahsoka. That's just a hunch of mine. But beyond that, I don't think we need to see more live action Luke stories sandwiched in between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. We already had Adam Christopher's book, Shadow of the Sith, where Luke's heavily involved there with Lando. I just don't know that I want to see a Luke series with someone else playing him. I firmly believe, until they prove me wrong, and the Mon Mothma thing, I think, is an exception to this rule. When you're talking about legacy characters, one, if you try to recast Luke, which I think finally people have stopped saying Sebastian Stan because he's like 45. But
yeah, maybe my note to the world is finally getting out there.
Yeah,
not Sebastian Stan.
I know.
It literally was written there, and I was like, James, is that you?
But I think that would be like, what actor would want to take that burden? Because you know that actor's going to get eaten alive by people who are just waiting to pounce, plus people who may just not like it. And then also, like, what story? Like, I agree with Mark Hamill. He said, I don't know that they need to tell more Luke stories. And if Mark Hamill's saying that, that's pretty big. So I kind of liked what he said, but I disagree with him about the recast thing. I think Lucasfilm, as a rule, for the most part, when it comes to main characters, they will recast for younger versions, but for older versions, it appears, Grand Moff Tarkin, Luke, Leia in Episode 9, famously, that people forget because it was done so well, is they're going to do their best to keep the continuity and the suspension of disbelief. Because my number one example I always go back to is the sequel to Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal. They got Julianne Moore in for Jodie Foster, and it just didn't hit the way it should have because of the chemistry that Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins had in Silence of the Lambs. When I was looking at the screen, no matter how many times they said Clarice Starling, I did not see Clarice Starling, and it was just very difficult for me. And as a Star Wars fan, you could times that by 5 billion. You could put someone in a black outfit with the glove and the lightsaber and the hair. I'm going to look at that person and say, that as a cosplayer as Luke Skywalker. It will not work for me. That's me personally. I do not believe in recasting people after someone had played them. Younger, yes, because that makes sense. I look different now than I did when I was 20. That stuff makes sense. But to say like we're gonna pick someone up 5 years after Return of the Jedi, and it's Zac Efron, it's not gonna be him, of course, it'd be a nobody, but John Doe as Luke Skywalker, no thanks. And
Zac Efron type.
Yeah, I think they'd be just sort of making it just to make it, and it doesn't make sense. That doesn't do it for me. So I sort of agree with him in that they don't need to tell more Luke stories, but I disagree about recasting. But I like if Mark Hamill can say, I don't own Luke Skywalker, then fans need to step away from this whole, I own this is my Star Wars, and this is how it should be and stuff. If the guy playing the role for 50 freaking years is sitting there saying, they just rented it out to me. Luke doesn't belong to me. That is a big thing. That's one of the most important things I think he's ever said that I think needs to be a reminder for people. And I really appreciate him for doing that. So I'm mixed on this because of those two elements. I'd hope they don't recast Luke Skywalker because I think that actor would be in for a big deal of heat. And I don't know that the juice is worth the squeeze to make up some Luke story that's not going to mean all that much, because they're not going to do the Luke and Ben Solo stuff in live action with a different actor as Ben and a different actor as Luke. And then we go to TFA and we have Mark Hamill back. That'd be a mess. And that's just my opinion. I think that'd be a big mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of torn. I think I tend to lean like I'm okay with not getting certain stories of Luke in live action, and if they want to tell those stories, let's get them in a game or something. Let's do something, because we obviously got Battlefront 2, and he shows up in that, and there's some excerpts there where Luke was able to be that Jedi. But it didn't, and it looked like Mark, and he was able to tell a story in that time period where he was at that point. And it didn't have to be a live action recasting or anything along those lines. That being said, I'm always okay with this. I like watching Star Wars and enjoying the parts out of it that I like. I wasn't for Obi-Wan. That was to me, that was a make it because you can make it thing. It didn't feel necessary to me. I watch it and I didn't love it, but I love it because it's Star Wars, and I'm like, I'm enjoying this series and I'm having a good time, and I'm cool with this existing. You bring up a good point. Like, you might just look at that person and say, that's not Mark Hamill to me. But I think still at the end of the day, if they ever did go that route, I would be like, yeah, but come on, some of this stuff is really cool. Like, just in your head, like, that's Luke Skywalker, and he did this really cool stuff, and he would show up in our discussions, like our Kessel runs, for instance. Like, it'd be like, remember in that show when Luke did that really cool thing? It is Luke, So I'm okay with it if they did it, but I think I tend to lean on, I'd probably give them the smarter applause to just either not recast and don't tell the stories and all that, or if just not recast and do the digital thing that they've been doing and use it to the best effect that they can in today's age right now to bring the real Luke Skywalker to the screen visually, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And just to point out something from the chat, I would support Steve Buscemi being cast as Leia post Return of the Jedi. I will stand by that. And just one thing, if you're disagreeing, I know audio people listening are like, I don't care about this, John, but if you're watching live and you're in the chat and you're disagreeing with people, just be nice. We don't fight here in the base. If you want to do that, you can go somewhere else. If you do disagree with someone, just be polite about it and be nice. You're talking to another human being. That's how we like to conduct things around here. So we appreciate that.
Well, let's get into someone who was not recast. And that is, of course, live action Thrawn, as he was asked in an interview recently about the process of returning to this character. And of course, I'm talking about Lars Mikkelsen. I don't know why I didn't say that, but he was asked about returning to the character, and if he went back to those episodes of Rebels to reestablish himself and understand all that. And he had a very interesting answer, which is no, that he didn't. He almost purposefully avoided doing that because he felt like the way the character was brought to life was then, and this is now, and there's a different life to that character in a box when you're recording those vocals in the closet, kind of a thing, versus the type of space you would want to be in when you're bringing that character to life. You're in the makeup, you're on set, you're in that world. And so he says, just the same as a character would be one way at one point in their life, and moving forward to this next point, I don't need to go back. I have the memories. I don't need to be in that space again. And I'm paraphrasing all that, but this was the basic concept of why. Because I'll tell you this, for me personally, I immediately read the headline and I was like, what? Why? Like, why wouldn't you go back and rewatch Rebels and get yourself in the mindset of that character and what he has done in canon and all this other stuff? But after reading the article, I thought, the way he explains it makes a lot of sense. And I wanted to start with Lacey on this one and your thoughts on Lars Mikkelsen getting into the character of Thrawn for his live performance and how that was different than Rebels.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised by his comments because I feel like other people, like Rosario Dawson even said she went back and watched Ahsoka, and other people said that they went back. I think Natasha Debord, I'm going to slaughter her last name, Natasha
Lou Bordizzo.
Yep.
Lou Bordizzo. I forgot the Lou part. Sorry. She went back and watched
Lugal.
Rebels. She went back and watched Rebels. So it's surprising to me that he wouldn't watch his own performance back. But at the same time, similar to you, James, I thought the same thing. I was like, okay, that does make sense. Because you want to bring something else to the role, something new and fresh. And you're not going to do that if you go back and just like go through what you've already done. I can tell you what, though, I'm not the biggest Thrawn fan like out there. I am probably more on the side of like, oh, he seems cool. Okay. All right. People seem to really like this guy. But I would definitely, I'm so excited to see him in this role purely on the reaction he got at Celebration. Being in the room when he walked out and how he had like tears in his eyes and he was so excited to be there and everyone was so hyped for him makes me genuinely more excited. So I trust that whatever he thinks he needs to bring to the role to make it something bigger than what he initially thought it was, I'm on board.
It's funny. I don't know that it's exactly the same, but there are some interesting comparisons here. And I would almost venture to say, maybe a bold claim, but I think Thrawn's coming to live action is potentially a bigger deal than even Ahsoka coming to live action. And I know you weren't the biggest fan of Ahsoka, and then you became one once she showed up in The Mandalorian, and now you're a little bit more invested. So hopefully that happens here with Thrawn. But I can tell you this, Ahsoka was not part of Legends, and I have talked to a lot of people that I just know in my personal life and at work and things, where they're like, Disney Star Wars is whatever. And then the second I'm like, have you heard about Thrawn? And immediately everybody's like, what? It's like this thing now. I think they're doing something really cool for a larger group of fans, I think, than even Ahsoka. With people who were on the journey with Clone Wars and Rebels and things like that. Thrawn, I think, has a larger, wider net for fans that would be interested in seeing that character come to live action, even though I think Ahsoka probably has a more well-received process now. Because I don't know. It's an interesting thought process, but John, what do you think about his process and the possibility of, not the possibility of, but what it's going to be like when we see him in live action?
It's the summer of Mikkelsen. We got Mads Mikkelsen in Indiana Jones returning to Lucasfilm from Rogue One, of course, and now we have Lars Mikkelsen showing up as Thrawn. But this is very interesting to me because of I think we've talked about this before about like what makes them make the choice of, yes, you can carry on as the character in live action. We have to go in another direction with you, though. And with him, I think Lacey nailed it. and I think this was not by accident. He did seem a bit overwhelmed, but he kept it. The way he walked on stage with that presence, his shoulders back, slow, deliberate,
Just
confident.
taking it was a core moment for him. Like a
He was like
core
showing
memory.
us. He was showing us like this is what this guy looks like,
Right.
you know, without the
Right.
makeup. And I was like, oh, everything is deliberate, everything's calculated, everything's done for a reason. So I think that is the biggest part of, you know, where you get to take that next leap if you already played that character. I did find it interesting. I agree with you, James, that he sort of said like, no, we're doing something different here. But that could mean a lot of things, because you can literally do anything in animation, and there are limitations in live action, even with the amount of special effects we have today. But in terms of storytelling, it's just different. It's just a different type of storytelling. So I'm not that concerned about that. I also think it could be part of that narrative of, we want to make sure everyone feels like they can just meet this character for the first time now and go on the adventure, because they're putting all their chips in this basket with Thrawn. And Filoni said it. He's like, he's the villain. He's the villain. He's our big villain here. You have all these rebels, and you have the Ghost Crew, and you have all these people involved, the Mandalorians and Skeleton Crew. All these people are going to be involved on sort of this like good side, but we're not entirely sure about all the characters on the bad side. To simplify it, like George Lucas maybe would, but I think we don't know a lot of them. We're meeting a lot of these characters for the first time. The one we are familiar with, for the most part, is just Thrawn. So I think they really need to make sure that they do something to grab everybody with your main villain, and I think that's going to be a central focus. So I think that all sort of went into their approach to this whole thing. And then I liked, well, you know, what he had to say. You know, he's an established actor. He seems to command a lot of respect, but he said he just sort of really got a kick out of looking in the mirror and seeing Thrawn and look back at him. And I think based on the reaction, at least so far, whether it's old school EU people, because I think they're doing the right thing, like they did with Ashley Eckstein and involving her with the transition for Ahsoka into live action, is they have Timothy Zahn involved, and they said they've spoke with him and consulted with him, and they're doing the right thing to honor, you know, those fans. But it seems like the overall reaction to Lars Mikkelsen playing live action Thrawn, not just at Celebration with the big ovation and the final confirmation of those rumors, but I think overall, I haven't seen EU people say like, oh, this guy he doesn't look like Thrawn. He's not going to be good as Thrawn. Now that might change when the show comes out, but as of now, it seems like everyone's sort of pulling in the same direction of, this is our Thrawn. We're getting behind this guy. Let's see what he could do now beyond the animated realm.
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody wasn't convinced, but I hope like what we're saying here about how I got from step A of like, really? Seriously, guy? You know, to like later being like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I think there is a huge difference between when you're hired to come in and play a vocal performance of a character. Like I love Clone Wars. I love Rebels. I think Rebels is probably one of the best Star Wars stories ever told. But I think there's a big difference between somebody being hired to read the lines in that moment and get into that headspace, like the voice actress who plays Lorna D in like one of the you know, audio dramas or something like that, versus that same person being hired to play the live action version of him in a Disney Plus series. It's like, all of a sudden you're going to be like, whoa, I'm going to be way more into this character now. And I need to get into the headspace and understand them from a completely different, more serious level. So yeah, I'm totally with Mars on this, and or Mars Lickelson. Yeah, I don't know on that. And I hope that Thrawn ends up being an amazing character for everybody. But you know, we've been going with this for a little bit. Do we have any super chats? I was just curious.
We do. So our super chat
good.
tonight is from Andrew Staley. Andrew, what's up? Andrew, we were actually just talking about watching that episode from The Mandalorian, and we watched it with Andrew at Celebration.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
So we miss you, bud. He said, well, Steve Buscemi may not be wearing the Leia gold bikini, but here's another contribution towards John wearing that in Japan. Maybe.
Jeez.
Have a good weekend. Man. Thanks, Andrew. I really hope it happens, guys.
Thanks,
I guess we have to make it a goal more attainable than 100,000.
Yeah.
Maybe we had to make it more attainable.
John will have to contemplate that. What's
Well,
a real
look,
goal he could set?
If we hit 100,000 subscribers, I mean that's a good problem to have. I will wear it proudly, and I'll make sure I do like keto leading up to celebration, so I get in like the best shape possible. But Andrew, like I'll turn the spotlight on Andrew because he doesn't like that. But Andrew was at the Indy 500, and Adam Driver was the like
He
start.
was.
What do they call it? The man
He
of honor
waved the
or whatever.
green
Yeah.
green flag, and he
Yeah,
did it
gentlemen, start your engines and all
very
that.
like he committed because
Oh, he's a
someone put him
military
next.
guy. Yeah.
Someone put him next to who did he put next? Oh, Chris Hemsworth, who was like, "Hooray!" He was
No.
like full body,
Yes.
like I'm gonna
Yeah.
fall off this platform.
Right. No, but that's thank you so much, Andrew. That's really cool. Appreciate it, man.
That guy's awesome.
Yeah. One of the best. One of the best.
All right, guys, let's talk a little bit about our next story here, and that is Skeleton Crew. Now we talked. Oh, was it this episode? No, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the Writers Guild and all that on Mondays, so stay tuned for that. But we're going to talk a little bit about it today because the Writers Guild of America have now released on their website the writers for Skeleton Crew. And this mostly consists of two main individuals. Sorry, I didn't pull this story up. It's John Watts and what is it?
Christopher Ford.
Yep, Christopher Ford. That's right. I'm so bad with names. They are going to be writing the chunk of the story from episodes 1 through 4 and also 7 through 8, while episodes 5 and 6 are going to be handled by Myung Jo Wesner. And she doesn't have a lot of credits, but she does on IMDb at least. But if you can find her Twitter and her, her own personal page, she has done a number of features in multiple genres, including science fiction, action, drama, horror, and like it just feels a little bit like that's maybe the direction they were going for Skeleton Crew as far as like from a family perspective, but it's sci-fi and horror and all this other stuff. So she fits in very well there. Let's talk about what this all means as far as how the series is going to go, and I'm going to kick it off with Lacey. We got 3 writers writing different episodes. What do you think?
I mean, this isn't surprising. I think with every movie and show, there are plenty of writers that go into it. So the amount of writers doesn't surprise me. John Watts is a big person that's on this show. He was the one that came out to announce it. He's the one that's been very adamant in who's directing it, who's starring in it. He's played a really big role. So seeing his name, I was like, yes, of course. And I know John Watts has worked with Christopher Ford before on some projects, so that makes sense.
Homecoming.
I did look up Christopher Ford and saw that he did Chaos Walking, which didn't do so well.
But we have to thank him because maybe that's part of how we got Daisy back in Star Wars.
Correct, but I'm just saying story-wise. Like,
yeah, no, I know.
I saw that and I immediately went, ooh. But yeah, I don't know a lot about Myung John Wesner or Joe Wesner, but she, like James said, has a ton of background in different genres. So I trust John Watts' ability to find someone to do a good job and someone that he trusts to tell his story. So I stand by that. But it's nice to see people associated with projects, especially writers at this time, getting the credit that is due. Hopefully they get paid for what they should be paid.
Yeah, it should be noted too. I noticed on her Twitter that she also is a supporter of the writer strike. I imagine the other guys as well. But while I was like trying to do some research on her, she had posted a couple things about how important that is. So
so I stand by that. I hope that happens for them. That being said, as a Star Wars fan, anytime we get updates that the production is happening and we're seeing names that are tied to things that are very definitive, that are like, yes, this is happening, is good. Because as we know, a lot of projects can come and go and be very kind of unsure. So it's nice to know that we're probably getting this year. Fingers crossed.
All right, well, John, what do you think about the announcement of the writers?
I find this very interesting because with Spider-Man Feige took a big risk with John Watts and Christopher Ford to do like the reboot of Spider-Man because there wasn't a lot of track record there, and it becomes this big hit. And Spider-Man, they get Spider-Man right in the MCU, and it takes off to this billions and billions of dollar grossing trilogy, and it's going to continue with whatever. And you gotta, it's such a cool story because I feel like a lot of times when we're talking about Hollywood, we hear the terms like nepotism. It's like, oh, they got this because they knew this person, and that does happen a ton. You'd be surprised how many people you're like, they're that person's kid, or
Nepo baby.
His dad was the lawyer for Guns N' Roses, if anyone knows that one. But it's just that happens. But then, and I don't know, maybe that's the case with these guys and their connections, but you look at the IMDb or their Wikipedia filmographies and you're like, wow, how did John Watts land that movie? And then you're like, Christopher Ford, like he did a horror movie and then like a low budget Kevin Bacon movie that critics enjoyed, and he gets to co-write a Spider-Man movie. And then now you have my young Joe Wesner. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that right.
I think that's right. I went looking for that too.
There's one credit on IMDb for her, and it's like an episode of a Hulu series. And here she is writing two episodes of this Star Wars series. Now I don't know if that's like, did they pair her up with the Daniels to direct? I want to see which directors get paired up with who. But a part of me makes me a little nervous. Like I was talking about the Charmin Obaid-Chinoy being, never doing a feature film, and she's doing the next Star Wars movie. Like that does make me a little nervous, as it should. I hope she does a great job. I'm rooting for 100%. But if you don't have many writing credits and they're like, you're doing 25% of this Star Wars show for this platform that has taken some hits lately, that's putting a lot of faith. And I got to give them credit for doing that. And I'm rooting for her now to now be the next, Rick Famuyiwa or next Deborah Chow, somebody that we didn't know was a household name. And now all of a sudden they're executive producing series. So I find this all very interesting in a good way because I'm thinking about it optimistically. And I think, I'm trying to think that Skeleton Crew is going to capture that magic of those 80s coming of age types of movies. So I'm very eager to learn more about these writers, and of course eventually see Skeleton Crew later this year, because I think, strike aside, that should be locked in because it's post-production, and I believe they confirmed Jaleel White, I believe, was said is coming out in November or December. So it's all pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest takeaway for me here is specifically what episodes they're directing, because you have the duo doing 1 through 4 and then returning again through 7 through 8, and we think 8 episodes in the show. So it's totally like the beginning and the end, like we're first act, third act, and we're kind of letting someone come in and maybe take us on a little adventure, switch things up in the center, so that it doesn't feel all like one complete thing. We can go on a journey. Maybe we can have a couple Lizzo Jack Black episodes somewhere in like the 5 and 6 range, and kind of do something else. But when we come back, and what you're solidified with, I saw the first of it, I went on the journey. When you get to the end of it, you want to have episodes 1 and 8 really be the story from beginning and end. And I think having them do the first 4 and then coming back for the last 2 makes the most sense. And Mandalorian, this is in conjunction with other directors and what episodes they're doing and stuff. So it's not like imperative. Like what I'm saying isn't even like the definitive way that things are going to go. Like we're going to watch these episodes and be like, yeah, 1 through 4 and 7 and 8 were great. You know what I mean? It could totally depend on how they switch up the directors. Yeah. 1 through 4 would be, this director. 7 through 8 was a different director. So it doesn't matter who wrote it. It has a completely different feel because for that reason, Yeah. Could be the order that they shot him. They did 1 and 4 and then 7 and 8 back to back because all those people were on set at the same time. And then they shot 5 and 6 last. So everybody's tired, or whatever. Like, I don't know, there's so many dependent things. But it is interesting how they've split it up as far as these people handling this portion of the story and then finishing later at the end. With a little misdirect there in the middle. Before we wrap up, I think because we're done with Resistance Report, but I do want to ask if we have any more super chats.
We do. So we have a super chat from Christian. Christian.
What's up, Christian?
Just kidding, Christian. Thanks for the super chat. He said, I just wanted to drop some love and apologize for missing a lot of these live showings recently. It's okay. He said, shaking my head.
Yeah, totally.
Anyways, I love you guys. See you in a bit. Parenthesis, P.S. Someone is wearing a Leia bikini at Star Wars Celebration Japan. LOL.
Does that stand for SWCJ stand for Star Wars Celebration John?
I love how, by the way, this is what's the funniest thing about this bikini thing is it all started because I said I would wear it, and it's now turned into nobody wants to see me wear it. Everyone wants to see John.
That's right, baby.
I was sitting here thinking, like, I don't know who I would want to see, like, wear. I don't want to see me wear it. I don't want to see Lacey wear it. I don't want to see John wear it.
I'm doing it for the sake of the pod, man.
I just don't want to see John wear it because that also means, side note, we have 100,000 subscribers.
I want people who don't like me and are afraid of seeing a 6'1", 220-pound dude in a Leia bikini subscribe to our channel just to make that happen.
I just love that. That's what it's like. That never happened, and all that's happened is, oh, John's gonna wear it. Okay, guys, John's gonna wear it.
well, and I got thank you, Christian. And Christian's alluding to seeing a bit. I assume he's going to join our call. So for patrons who are admirals, generals, and spice runners, we do a sort of a hangout where we just hop on Zoom and chat and talk about Star Wars, food, like anything really. So we're hopping there after this. So if you are a patron of those tiers, we hopefully we'll see you. So Christian, I assume you mean that. So we'll see you soon. But thanks for the super chat, man. Appreciate that.
Yep.
Kendall wants everybody to do a TRB Leia bikini meetup.
There we go. Let's go.
We do have one more super chat, which is from Matt Lawless. Thank you, Matt, so much. He said,
"Wait,
hey,
Lacey,
TRB.
what if we set up a giant magnet wall and we all jump and try to like stick to the wall in our metal bikinis and then take a big photo?"
That might be the dumbest thing you've ever said on this show.
Yeah.
Ever?
No, at least top 5.
Like, where is that coming from?
We do a Kessel run.
What are you talking about?
You took metal, just the fact that it was made of metal, and went to like a crazy place.
Metal's
all right, Matt Lawless, thank you so much for the super chat. I said, hey TRB, if the indie movie underperforms, can it put Mangold's movie at risk? We've heard very little development news on the Mangold movie. This is what we like to call the James curse, because James brings this up every time someone does a movie, whether it's Colin Trevorrow, Patty Jenkins.
It was like the second thing I thought of when he was announced. I was like, I don't know if that's good for Indy or bad for Indy, because there is a curse that if they get announced for Star Wars, whatever that thing is right before Star Wars is, it's all of a sudden doomed. And I'm like, oh no.
Man.
But I'll go first on this. I don't think so. I think given what Mangold's done with other movies and how they've been received by fans, I think that there's enough in there that, you know, they're looking at this movie and seeing exactly what it is, because this is a Lucasfilm production too. This isn't like a side note like Book of Henry, or this was like with Wonder Woman 2 or whatever. Like it was a different studio project that was brought in. I think this is them looking at exactly what he's done through the whole process, and they get along with him. They see what they've delivered, and then they said, yeah, this makes the most sense. Let's bring this person on. So I don't think that it will ruin his chances with working in Star Wars. Wait, no, hold on. I don't think that it means anything bad for Indy, but it does sort of a little bit scare me that if fans don't like Indy, then Lucasfilm might be forced to make a move. You know, I don't know. I
just feel like expectations are so high for all these nostalgic based movies, and so no matter what he does, there's going to be certain people that it's never going to match what their expectations are.
Yeah, like I'm gonna like Indy. I imagine. I don't feel like I'm gonna walk into that. I might see the flaws that other people see, but I'm good with that stuff. I normally find the good in the movie. I'll be fine with Indy, and I'll be fine with the movie that he comes up with. But I sometimes get worried if there's like this big like you know, like when South Park was all on the George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, what they did.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like if people react that way, then they're going to be like, I don't want this guy working on Star Wars. And it's like,
Yeah.
man,
Well, Matt did follow it up in the comments saying, don't mean to be a downer. LOL. I'm pumped for both movies. We're not saying you're a
We all
downer,
are.
Matt. No
Yeah.
worries.
Yeah.
It's just constantly a little bit of a joke here on the pod where we're like, uh-oh, this person's having another movie come out. Fingers
Yeah.
crossed for them.
Totally.
Yeah, and I think Indy will do really well because I think the older audiences are still going to show up for Harrison Ford. I think younger audiences will show up who may have liked Logan or other things Mangold has done. I still think Indy's going to do well. I'm not. I mean, the critic responses were shocking to me. I never would have expected, 52 on Rotten Tomatoes, meaning 1 out of every 2 critics didn't like it.
Yeah,
but
monetarily it will do well. I'm worried about people walking out of it being like, well, that was a waste of $12.
I think the fan score will still be like above 80 on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it'll be 80% like it, because we've seen that a lot where some of these movies are getting like slammed by critics and then the audiences love it, and then vice versa. Like, I don't want to say it, but I will say it. Last Jedi, we got a 95 by critics, and then it split audiences down the middle. And there's been other movies. I'll never forget the first reactions to Wonder Woman 84. I was like, oh my god, this sounds like this is going to be the greatest superhero movie ever made. They were like,
Really?
I was brought to tears. What an achievement! Gal Gadot shines. And then I see that movie. I'm like, what a bad movie. As the word choices I'm picking on a live broadcast, but you know what I mean? So I'm not too hung up on critics. I don't think critics, for me personally, I'm 40. I don't think I need to be like, what are the critics saying about this movie? I think I have a good idea whether or not I'm going to like a movie or not. And I think I'm going to really like seeing Indy 5.
So people did
thank you, Matt, for the super chat.
Yeah, thanks for the super chat, Matt. We appreciate it. People were bringing this up in the chat, and I know it did come out today, which was Taika's comments about Star Wars, which is, speaking of another person, Taika, he had said that he's working on his movie and he's got a good idea for it, but it's just as with all films, it's the middle part. You're like, quote, what's going to happen?
You know what's funny about that?
Which takes me right back to my
Go ahead.
Hold on,
rock
let me
days.
finish the quote.
Yeah.
The
All
quote
about the
says,
middle
and
part.
then and he goes, so what's going to happen? And then you look at all those films that are so great and you're like, well, I guess I can't meet some smuggler with an alien sidekick. And then they followed up in this article with Kathleen had said back in April, like, oh, Taika's working away. He's writing a script to himself. He doesn't really want to bring others into that process. And here he is saying, well, I don't really have a script. I don't have a middle. I just know where it starts and where it ends.
And
she said
the ending.
She said we have a first and a second act. We don't have a third.
An end. Yes.
He says we've got a first and a third. We
so
don't have
they
a second.
they've both agreed that they have a first act.
Yeah.
Which is good. But no,
and Kathleen's finding out that there's not a person with an alien sidekick today.
Yeah, I didn't want to. Yeah, I didn't add that to the news today because we had these other stories. But also, I feel like there's not enough to go by without leaning to the negative just based on pure speculation.
Of course, but I think it ties into this though, that going into the indie question of like, oh, what happens? I think it's natural to be worried. It's okay. It's normal to have that reaction. It's just don't stay there. Like, be hopeful.
I had put the Taika movie in purgatory with the Rian Johnson and stuff. Like when I saw Obeid Chinoy, Filoni, and Mangold come on stage, I was like, they reset everything. And that's sort of what Jeff Snyder had said, I believe, on Hot Mic with our buddy Roca, was that they're redoing it. Taika's done. And I had thought for a while Taika was done because a lot of his comments reminded me of Rian Johnson's. And now they still sort of do. So how do you go from here? I guess we are talking about it. How do you go from getting a pitch approved to make a Star Wars movie, and now he's saying like, I have ideas? That sounds like it's like we're getting like the prequel quotes to when he got booked for the role. You're supposed to have the ideas then get signed on. So it's very confusing. I don't know. I hope they work it out. Yeah.
Well, that's it for the super chats. And now I'm going to hand it over to me for Resistance Transmissions. Thanks, Lacey. Really appreciate it. You're doing an awesome job. I must say, you're just killing it tonight. All right. So this is resistance transmissions.
Jeez.
So this is where John puts up a crazy, wacky situation on Twitter. And you guys give your answers. And I don't know what the situation is. I don't know what he wrote. I don't know what your answers were. And I genuinely haven't been online lately because I've been, working. But it's going to be a fun time. All right. So the situation is pick any Star Wars character and make an acronym about them using their name. Example, Watto. Wagers Anakin to tempting offer. Ooh. All right. First up.
That freaking genius.
Maybe it was Lacey. She's really killing it tonight.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
All right. First up is, oh my god, this is a great name. John Bonhomie. Oh, okay. John Bonhomie said Shirley Sheev. Shirley hates everyone everywhere viciously. All right. We're getting those in there. Okay. Next is Mark Joyce at Mark Joyce. Hey, Mark. He said, wait, why is John Bonhomie in there again?
Oh, yep. My bad.
You get a special shout out.
I double checked all these too. We're good. We're good.
He said Bendu, balanced, eternally neutral, delightfully unhinged.
I thought
like
that was
it.
a clever one. It was like almost like a haiku.
If
Yeah.
I ever had a memoir, it would be titled Delightfully Unhinged. That would be the title of my memoir. All right, next.
Which
Can I
one?
ghostwrite
Which
that?
between me and John, which
Sure.
one's balanced and which one's eternally neutral? I'm probably eternally neutral.
John's not included in this.
Yeah, I don't know.
James would be balanced, eternally neutral. That's a compliment, John.
All right. Yeah, I got you. All right, next up.
JW Englehart at JW Englehart wrote Lando
Ooh,
loved
right
a
here.
noble droid once. Oh.
Yes, he did.
Oh,
R.I.P. L3.
good one.
I'm laughing at the comments that say that we're losing control. No, it's just me. It's not all of us. It's just me. Semperfi Danny at Semperfi Danny said Han, handsome, amorous, amorous. How do you say that? Amorous?
Amorous.
Amorous.
Yeah.
Nerf herder. What's amorous mean?
Like loving. Love.
Oh. Loving, handsome nerf herder. Nice
Like-
word, Danny.
That's amore.
Yes.
Amorous.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Brian Pothier. Brian! Where you been, bud? At B Pothier said, Wampa. Why amputate my pitching arm?
Oh my gosh. I can almost visually see that. He's like, why amputate my and I get stuck at B.
Yeah.
Like, what are we gonna do here?
Yeah.
And then you land it. That's pretty awesome.
Okay, what's next? Oh, Haas. What up, Haas? He said Haas.
Haas sent in 47 of them. So I
Of
did
course
pick
he
one.
did. Because
Yeah.
he's a wordsmith. He likes to do word-related games.
Yeah.
I
Haas
mean, you just
underscore
gave him
Aslan.
something to do all day. He's like, oh, I got another one.
What up, Haas? He said Vader. Very athletic despite electronic regalia. Ooh. Well said. That was good.
Impressive.
Yeah.
I'm still kind of stuck back on delightfully unhinged. I feel like it's perfect for me. Simon Oliver Wright at UFO Spug. Luke, look up, kill everyone on the Death Star. Okay. Well done. Well done, Simon. KENDALLorian at Galactic Curator, who's in the chat right now. What up, Kendall? He said jacked fish. Of course this was included.
Yeah.
Just another creature killing everything, daring, float in short range.
That was doing so well, and then it suddenly got to that like we're hitting letters.
Can I add a TO in here? Yeah.
It's just another creature fish killing everything, daring, float in short range. Like,
Kendall did say he's not above pandering, so he knew his audience. Stephen A. Bowman at Stephen A. Bowman. Hey, Stephen, how's it going? He said Kylo Ren. Kill your loved ones. Regret everything now. I'm sorry, LOL. It just came to mind. Oh my God. Stephen. I have a lot of
Regret
questions,
everything
Stephen.
now. I love
Number
that
one, how
Kylo
dare
is a
you?
phrase. I love that
Yeah.
Kylo is a phrase and Ren is like the follow-up to that phrase.
Yeah,
It's so good.
that was great.
That's pretty
Steven.
awesome.
Now I put a
Alright,
call
this-
out. I put a call out for this one. I said if anyone gets this, they're getting on the show.
All right.
And
Oh my
someone did it within 3 minutes.
John RISI at John S. RISI. I'm not surprised. John is an architect. He's a smart guy. He came up with this. So I'm not even, someone else say that name. I can't. say it.
Mithron Yerodo.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thrawn. He said meticulous intellect towards the historical regime's art within. None underestimates reality under ominous destruction overall. Oh my God. Oh, that was wow.
Well done, John.
Well done. Is
everybody.
that it?
If you're
That's
watching
it.
the video format, we throw them up on screen so you can kind of pause it and process that a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, great job, John, to go through all of those. I bet that took a little bit longer than most other people's.
Thank you guys so much for taking part in Resistance Transmissions. If you want to
Oh.
be a part of the show, yes.
Well, this. He added this too. He said, "This was tough. Hope I got it."
You got it, buddy. Yeah.
It wouldn't fit in the thing, so I had to add it.
Yes, someone else had submitted one just after him, but he sniped him. He got it.
But yeah, as I was saying, guys, if you want to be a part of the show, make sure to follow us on Twitter at TRB Podcast, but also all the social channels, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We're all TRB Podcasts on there. And let us know what you think once John posts a situation and you can make it on the show. Back to you, John.
Oh, well, let me tell you, folks, thank you so much for listening,
Folks.
watching, being a part of TRB, however you take in the show. Thank you. We really appreciate it. And I'm going to check right now as we're live if we hit 500 ratings on Spotify yet, because we are close. We were like 10 away. And if we did, that'd be amazing. And we haven't. We're 8 away. So if you haven't rated us on Spotify yet, just look us up, Resistance Broadcast, and hit rate and hit 5 stars, and we appreciate that. But the point is, whether you listen to us or watch us, thank you, and please spread the word. Please rate us. Please share on social media when we post episodes. Anything you could do to keep getting the word out there. It's made a difference, and it continues to make a difference. And even if you think, oh, my 300 followers, it doesn't matter, it does. It does, because if 2 of those people didn't know, and they start listening and watching, then we add more to the party, and it's a good time. So thank you. As far as Patreon goes, if you want to support the podcast, we're actually late, but we're heading over soon to our meetup with our admirals, generals, and spice runners. But check out our Patreon, patreon.com/resistance broadcast. Tiers start at just $5 per month. If you're able to support us, that's great. If not, totally cool. But check it out and check out the tiers. And if it's something you think is worth supporting us here in the pod, and also the perks and rewards that we have over there, definitely check it out. Patreon.com/resistance broadcast. And a special thank you to our generals and spice runners, CARMELO, John RISI, who you just saw kill it in Resistance Transmissions, JETTA, Rosewater, Frank Grande, Darth Hurricane, Nick Kratz, Christian Morales, Brian Smith, Matt Chitty, Danny, Mike Ramori, Matt Heath, Brendan McLaughlin, Count Pepto, Sneaky Zebra, who you're going to see on the Patreon pod race on Monday, Aaron Ellington, Micah Harrison, Colin Cormier, Haz Aslam, Jolton, Jedi DiMaggio, and Diana. A bunch were in the chat today, so good to see you all. And our spice runners, David Probus, Neil Shaw, Kendall Gelner, Dave Hornack, Thomas Hennessy, Andrew Staley, Jeremy Myers, Michael Fry, and the Fort Worthian. Welcome to the Fort Worthian, our new spice runner. And thank you, everybody, for your support, however you support TRB. We really, really appreciate it. Twitter for me, at Johnny Hoey. And my movie podcast, Just Like the Movies. We should be putting out our episode on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade early next week. Mike has a bit of a throat thing going on, so we're going to see if he can get through that, but hopefully we have that out for you.
You need me to come step in for Mike? I can.
You gonna watch some Last Crusade?
Yeah, I'll step in. You want me to step in?
I'll let you know. I'll let you know how Mike's doing. You'll be able to curse on that pod, so that's right up your alley. For people who don't know, girl's like a truck driver. All right.
John, did you know that Mel Gibson was actually up for the role when
I don't doubt that. Yeah.
Oh, for the role of Mike? Oh, that's quite a casting.
James, how about you, man?
Twitter and Instagram is where you can find me, both at Myra Trunks.
All right, Lacey.
People can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lacey Gilleran and on TikTok at It's Lacey Gilleran.
All right, that does it for us here. Some of our patrons will see you soon to hang out, and everyone else, we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and we'll see you Monday morning with another episode. We're doing a Kessel run. We'll tell you what it is yet, but it's going to be fun right here on the Resistance broadcast. We'll see you around, kids.